Just gonna get on the highway here. Hi, and welcome guys to a new episode of the Nomadic Business Inside. Today, it's kind of a special episode because I'm doing the first episode in a car. I think I'll do quite a few episodes in a car, but that's not the topic of today's episode. Today, we are gonna talk about all the ventures that we have ever built. So let's get started.
You are listening to LD Podcast. Would you like to publish with us? Tell us your story at www.ld.studio/podcasts. Edited and published by LD Studio.
Well, guys, it's good to be back. A new 2 weeks have gone, and a lot has changed since we did the last episode. We were on a rooftop in Quito, and within the last 2 weeks, we have gone to Spain, and we had to quite abruptly abort the mission of staying in Spain in our van to go back to Norway because there was a major change happening in one of our companies, and we actually suspected a major robbery. Which I'm not want to spend too much time on this episode, but in the end of the day, we had to go back to Norway way faster than we wanted to. But it felt good. We came back and we have stayed a couple of days now in Norway. And currently, I am in our Tesla, which we have owned for 6 years. I'm in our Tesla driving from Ålesund, which is our hometown on the west coast, to Oslo, the capital, to pick up a good friend from the airport, and then we together gonna go to the Swedish border for a couple of days of canoe riding on the lakes and tenting. The friend is called Martin. He's such a good bloke. We've been friends for many years, and we live in separate countries, so we often meet up once a year, twice a year, just us two, to do something together, which again makes me super excited to see him. And yeah, but let's get into the topic of this episode. All the ventures we have ever built. I felt it is time to give you guys a bit of an oversight of what has taken us to where we are now, what we've done, and the journey we have been through, because there has been plenty of ups and downs, plenty of stories to tell. And I'll try to make it short because very soon I'm at the airport and need to pick up Martin. Actually, I'm going to make 2 consecutive episodes here from the car directly. So I'm going to make this one, which you're listening to now, and I'm following up straight after one with one more, which we're going to release 2 weeks later, which is about how we started to make and save money. Because I think a lot of people are interested in that. One thing is building companies, one thing is building income remotely, but how do you actually start? How do you move away from a regular job, an employed job? How do you start to build income? What kind of things can you do? And what, most importantly, can you do to not spend so much money? Anyway, I want to start our story when I was 14, 15 years old. So that's kind of way back. It's even before I met Sylvia, which wasn't the point where I started my first company, but it was at that age where I started to realize that I would really never work employed jobs, and I would have to go away where I need to start my own companies. And I think that's a quite important thing to realize. There's a lot of entrepreneurs who have that realization later in life. A lot of people that I know have gone through normal education, then they have gotten a job, and then they figure it out during the course of years. I had the chance of figuring out that very early, and I think sharing a bit of that path might help others to identify similar things in their life. I knew it because both in primary school, secondary school, and graduating grades from before entering college, I used to all the time set up new projects. If it was at school or outside school, didn't matter. It could be anything from building wooden cabins with friends to doing an activist project, contributing to developing the soccer team, the karate club, anything, you know. I was always the one setting the tone, setting the agenda, setting deadlines, managing things. And there is a lot of jobs where you can quickly rise to managing positions, but I also knew with myself that I don't follow others' orders very well. And that's a negative thing. That's something I've had to learn and train and become better in. But I knew very early on in my childhood that I have a very strong mind, and it's hard for me to, let's say, if you're gonna start in a big company and make your way up, before the point where you're actually in a managing position, you'll have to strictly obey command by other people. And this sounds way rougher than it actually is, but that's the fact. You have to obey orders from your manager or the director of the company or the board or whatever it is, a couple of years to prove yourself. And I knew very early on, when I was 14, 15 years old, that I would never ever handle that very well. It's something that already then seemed very demotivating to me. And so I wasn't really left with any other options besides starting my own things, because that was the only way where I'm at an early age could manage everything myself. And I knew I was a very realistic person. I still am. I'm optimistic, but still very realistic. And I knew that doesn't matter how smart you are or how talented, there is no way where big companies gonna trust you with a managing role before you turn at least 25, if not above 30. And I was just not ready to wait that long. I wanted to manage when I was 16, 17, 18. And I wanted to do all those mistakes. I wanted to learn in my own way. I wanted to pursue the knowledge that I felt I needed. So at that point, when I realized that I had to start my own things because I couldn't really cope with working my way up in other organizations, the choice was really made for me. There wasn't much of an option anymore. And hence, even though I graduated with really high grades and did really well in college, it was never really an option for me to go to university. I considered it for some time, and I think that's just natural for everyone because society is built up in a way where everyone who are smart people and ambitious people, they should take a higher degree at university. And it was quite challenging for me at some points as well there to defy that, because even my parents put quite a bit of pressure on me. Still, they are very open-minded people, so I can just imagine the pressure other people at that age are. And luckily for me, I was tough-minded. I said no. I can always go back to university if I fail. I want to pursue my own things after college. I'm not gonna take any degree. And this is something that we are speaking a lot about in our series and film project Time to Live. So if you haven't checked that out, you should when it's released, because that is the major topic in that series where we're debating the topic whether everyone needs to go to university and whether that's the right way to pursue a career, pursue your dreams. And we'll reflect over that throughout the course of 7-8 years of experiences. But yeah, I realized that when I was 15, 16. So all the way going through college, I had that mindset and I started to build up other things. And this is really where the story starts. Where did we start our first ventures? I registered my first company when I was just over 16 years old. That's when you legally can register your first company in Norway. Before that, I'd already kind of run like toy companies, because I remember when I was 14, 15, I had a day job after school in a supermarket. I also think that's really important. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity in my village to have such a kind of job in a supermarket from the age of 13, 12, 13 actually. And that taught me a lot about what I don't want to do in my life, but also how to build own income. And that's something we're going to talk about a lot in the next upcoming episode, how to not be spending so much. Anyway, to move a bit on in this story, I started my first company was 16. It was a climbing and structure company, since I come from the climbing industry. And I think that's something important. Pursue something you're good in, something simple. You can't create a technology company at 16 if you're not an extreme tech talent, you know. So be realistic. So I started a climbing course instructor company. I easily got clients through Facebook. I taught them how to climb, and I taught them, you know, educated them on different certificates. And I did that quite a lot. I rented the climbing hall in my local city to provide the courses. Did good money to be 16. And then at the age of 17, 18, that venture had grown to an extent where I could sell it off for a little bit to someone that took it over and continued those courses, because I knew I was moving on from the city. It wasn't a big amount. It was around, I think, like 3,000 euros, 4,000 euros, but I already made really good money off that company. And it was my first experience of not just making money off a company, of your own clients, but converting it in something you can sell, a system. And I've always been very, very focused on building systems in everything I do. When it was from school projects to my own company, systems are very important to scale things. And at that point, that was simple things, you know, having good course overviews, who has been registered, how do they register themselves, all that the stuff was set up, so it was something that was ready to go for the next person and earn money. That was a small venture, but I had good experience in building clients, building relationships, being professional, providing a service, and those experiences are invaluable at that age. And from there on, it was really easy. We moved into the content industry, but more as influencers at a very early age. When Instagram was just about getting a thing, we grew our profiles and had quite a bit of a client base for, I'd say, a 2 years time there. We went off to South America and stayed in South America for over a year. Let me know if you guys want to know anything more in this story, that you have questions or how we manage things. You just let me know in the comment field on YouTube or DM me on Instagram, and I'll try to make another episode where we answer this, because now I'm just running through things. But yeah, we went to South America and we had a quite well-paying influencer track going on there. But after a year, 1.5, we figured that this is not something we want to build further on. We don't like the image of taking money personally to influence people about products or services. So we kind of abandoned that idea when we said no to a lot of good paid missions. And we started to move into proper film industry, because I knew that I had a talent for story writing. I had been writing some films during my time in school and college. I'd also been like very low-key directing. I didn't have any experience with cameras, but we had picked up several cameras on our travels, and I felt in terms of pictures and lighting and visuals, I had a really good eye. So we pitched in a couple of minor film ideas to companies and relationships that I've already established. And I think that is one of the major things that has really boosted our growth all the time at such a young age. Is relationship is everything. You can have a great product, but if you have to start selling from scratch every time, that's something that's going to take a lot of time And in that time, you're not making any money. So it's always better to move from one sale to another sale to another sale and then grow organically. So I've always valued very much keeping hold of my network, building good relationships with the people I believe are valuable to us, but also friendships, not only seeing figures in terms of potential earnings or income, but you cannot make business long-term with people if you're not actually liking each other. So I was at the early age very, let's say, selective in terms of, okay, this is a contact, and okay, this is a contact which resonates very well with us, and those are people that really enjoy doing business with us. So growing that network, always keeping track of people we meet, having their contact details, investing time in getting to know them better, without having any sale in mind. Once you have a product, you have a very extensive network to sell it to. And that network, if you do the right step, that's a lifetime network. It doesn't belong, if you are the entrepreneur, if you're the creator and the center, that network belongs to you and not the product or the company that you create. And that might not be necessary to define by any contracts or anything. That's just how it is. There has been people I've worked with in very many different senses in companies and products, but we work together because we, through the core, are kind of business friends. And even at the age of 17, 18, you know, I still have all my contacts. I always back them up through Google Cloud and wrote very carefully notes about them, what they do, where they are from. So I have a big network, and I think that's the key result to everything. But yeah, after Influence career, we moved over to film. We kind of did it a bit independent. There wasn't any employees or anything. It was only me and then Sylvia. And we did a couple of big jobs. We also got quite a few jobs within fashion, portrait work, wedding, all this kind of standard entry-level stuff. But we figured out that was also not our thing. I think we could very easily continue on that track, making all right money, just working as independent photographers and cinematographers, because we did well and it was stress-free and we could travel. But I always had the urge of building teams. That was my biggest inspiration at a young age. And now I'm talking 21, 22. I was always more inspired by building work environments and building workplaces for others than making money for myself. Because if I would be only looking for making easy money for myself, I'd probably stay just as a cinematographer, as a photographer, and do some trading at the side. But I was always very intrigued of being an employee. No, sorry, an employer. And that was before I had ambitions within tech industry, within food industry. So it was natural to move into communication industry. And we also had been traveling for a couple of years, and at that point we decided it would be nice to come back to Ålesund. It would be nice to settle there, to buy some property at the age of 24, 23, 24, and start a studio, start an agency. And so that was really the start of LD Studio in 2020. And it has built a lot. And I know there's a lot of people involved here that will have different opinions because we have worked with a lot of people. And I think every entrepreneur that you'll meet that honestly has had the best intention of working with employees, he will tell you the same, that as an employer, it is a really tough game because there is so many mistakes you can do on the way, which you don't do intentionally, or you want to do right by people, but sometimes you're stretched by finances, sometimes you're stretched by time, sometimes you're stretched by other occasions which you can't control, so you will hurt people on the way. I think there is no employer that has built bigger successful companies that has not had employees angry at him, and that was a tough journey. And in the course of 4 to 5 years, we built a company that at some point had over 10 full-time employees, which I think is a big achievement at an age of under 25. In Norway, workforce is not cheap. We had 2 studios in different cities, and we had a lot of really exciting communication and film projects. As you know, by listening to the previous episodes, LD Studio, the company in itself, has been forced into bankruptcy by 2024 or New Year 2023, 2024. But we're continuing that journey into the communication industry, and we've taken new major steps. As I said earlier in the episode, network is personal, and every successful entrepreneur has had a bankruptcy at some point. And in many ways, I'm actually glad that we went into a bankruptcy, because it has taught me tremendous things. It has taught me tremendous things about how to set up companies, but also how to choose people, how to engage, how to write contracts. And honestly, at this point, I just accept it as a natural step in our history. But there's other things that we got to add in our track record of building ventures. During the time of LD Studio, we had 2 clear goals. One goal was to learn how to build a company with employees, because that is something we believed would be transferable to a lot of other industries. If it would be tech, food, whatever it is, I think communication is a much more low-scale investment point in terms of buying. You don't need very heavy machinery. You don't work probably with investors and all this kind of stuff. So you got to practice with everything that can go wrong and can go well with employees. And I have that experience now, and I'm only still in my 20s, and I have a lot of experience in it. So that was one of the key initiatives. And the other key initiative was building a strong remote team that has the capacity to accelerate other projects, other companies, because really what we wanted to do with LD Studio is to build a communication agency, but also an internal accelerator for our other companies and other ventures in the future, so that things like brand, communication, financing, all these standard procedures which you need to build companies, that can be handled by an internal team of experts that has been doing that for years. So it might get too complicated for people here to hang along, but there is a very long-term strategy in everything we do. And it has worked out really well. It has worked out exactly pretty much how we wanted it to run out. You might believe it or not, but there are records and films from back to 2016, 17, and 18 where Sylvia and me were discussing this kind of approach. Because we were saying that really communication industry is not our main target. It's something that we're really excited about, and it's something we think we're really talented at. But we want to contribute on a bigger level and face the truth. Communication industry is not changing the world in any way like transportation does, food industry, energy industry, construction industry. Those are the places where you're majorly going to impact the world. And we want to get into there, you know? And that's not easy industries to move into as an investor or entrepreneur, because they're heavily dominated by the ones that have extremely much more capital than you and who are much more experienced and older. But that's a beauty of it. Never stop believing. Never stop believing that you actually can make it into those industries. And now, I don't know, maybe in 2 years we're sick of being entrepreneurs and we stop our whole journey. I don't know what the future holds, but as I'm feeling now and as I've felt the last 10 years, we are on our path to moving into one of the heavy lifting industries as investors and entrepreneurs building own companies. But we'll see what future brings. Anyway, those were the 2 targets of building LD Studio. So while we built LD Studio, we also built a couple of other companies, which I'll not go in depth to, but I'll just mention them along the way, because they have been significant learning curves and there have also been significant income places. So one of the things we started very early was the Ryddmøre cleanup organization. So that was our first volunteer non-profit organization, which has been valuable because it's been valuable in terms of building a board of directors, working a lot with public financing, doing a lot of event coordination. Over a course of 5 years, we have had cleanup actions with over 20,000 people. And during fall 2024, we'll release our own documentary together with our partners there about the project specifics. So you should check that out on YouTube. But yeah, so that's Rydmøre, the cleanup organization. I've been deputy chairman there for many years. In 2021, we started to invest in a thrift shop and boutique concept in Ålesund. It's a pretty cool story. We took over a store from an old lady called Merete, and over a course of 2-3 years, we built it into a very exciting community hub, cafe and thrift shop, which now the recent year was donated to the Rydmøre organization. So now actually all the income from that store go to organizing cleanup actions with that organization. So it's a nice way of linking together our project and saying, you know what, this store is never going to make us any huge profits, and we earn enough money. We don't need those profits. Let's give them to something good. And I think I'm at least very proud of things like that, because those are things people do when they're in their 50s, 60s, and we already have the chance to do that kind of stuff, still being in the end of our 20s. During the course of building LD Studio, we also built the Digga Foundation, which is an audiovisual learning academy for kids that had a huge growth rate for 2-3 years. During 2024, the board, which I'm the chairman of, we have set things a bit on hold. There is couple of things that I don't want to go into depth now that has done that we are pausing the project a bit and evaluating if we've been going the right direction. But obviously it's been a big project. There's been big numbers involved, and it's been exciting because, again, many people, many events, kids, parents, new experience, employing CEOs, employing people. Very exciting. And 2023, we also founded Art in Space, which is intended to become a restaurant chain of healthy, self-supplied food. We've had quite a bit of issues starting it in Ålesund, which really not is our fault. The landlord which we were renting the place from has just for ages not managed to acquire the right paperwork to launch the restaurant, and hence we haven't received our licenses, which is a pain in the ass, but again, beautiful experience because we have learned everything that can go wrong. We have touched, so it has made me a much more skeptical investor, a much more skeptical entrepreneur. And that's such a healthy thing, because I've been in a lot of workshops and seminars where mentors have taught me, George, you're too optimistic. You need to learn to be skeptical. The best investors, the most successful investors, are aggressive risk takers, but they're also very skeptical. And I think only failure can teach you real skepticism. Because the people who are naturally skeptical, they'll just be it to everything. While I've, through the course of many years, learned through many different failures. So that's also an ongoing thing. But yeah, there's a couple of companies going on now. And in 2024, we also founded 2 new companies. I cannot go out with the names because they are kind of still under the hood. But one is a property investment company, which we have heavily invested in private properties that we are gonna renovate and flip, because housing industry, as you know from one of the previous episodes, is something we're heavily moving into. We've employed our own CEO and an own chairman for that company, which is everything we need at this point to run the company. It feels good. It's been very professional done. Things are going faster. We have a lot of experience now, so starting new companies, getting them to run well, getting them to make money, doesn't take as long time as it used to do. But yeah, that was a quick summary of our first 10 years of entrepreneurs, building companies, mostly in Norway, Scandinavia. I think the next 10 years will bring a lot more building together with external investors. We've had a lot of experience with own employees, with financing publicly in Norway and Scandinavia. Now our next steps is moving into grounds where there are bigger investments needed, and we're gonna work with external investors that are expecting a return of interest. So that's something I'm personally very looking forward to, because moving into my 30s, having the experience that I have, external investments is something that really intrigues me, and I've been touching it quite a bit already. We're already moving into it, so that's a big new chapter, and there's a lot of new exciting ventures to come, and I think the old ones still will continue to grow. So yeah, I'll keep you updated, guys. I know this was a lot of information, but I also got the questions from some of you that if I please could do an episode summarizing a bit of our history and what we've done and how we've come where we are. So I think it was important. The episode turned out a bit longer. I hope you guys got some good value from it. It's been exciting for me. And yeah, I'm going to continue a little bit more on my road trip now. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to pick up my good friend, and weather is finally turning. Rain has stopped, and I think we are going to have an amazing time at the lake in Femund. If you haven't checked out Femund in Norway, you should do it. One of the most beautiful places in Europe to go for a canoe trip for a week, or even more if you want. Thank you guys for listening. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always DM me on Instagram or comment them on YouTube. All the best. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to LD Podcast. We are continuously looking for the most talented innovators. No matter your background or expertise, shoot us an email at high5@ld.studio with your skills and portfolio.